Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here in a very beautiful surroundings of Soho Hotel. And thank you to everyone who's joining us on the live stream, of which there are many. My name is Jules McKean. I sit on the committee for the RTS with my co-producer, Kate Conway from Channel 4. And on behalf of us and Sarah, the chair, Sarah Booth, the chair, and Ali, wonderful Ali, who does actually all of the work from the RTS. Thank you very much for joining us. This is our third in the series of the digital season for the RTS. And this morning, we're talking about Beyond Broadcast, monetising IP in the digital first world. So I'm simply going to hand over to the wonderful Ros Atkins, who's very kindly agreed to chair for us. He is the analysis editor for the BBC News. And he, of course, co-presents the media show, which I'm sure you're all very avid listeners to, as am I. And thank you very much. Ros, over to you.
Thanks very much indeed for having me. Thanks to all of you for coming along. And thanks to our esteemed panel for giving us their time this morning. Let's get straight into this with some definitions. Liv, what is a digital studio?
You know. Well, yes, it gets a good fast. I think that's $1 million question. I think it means different things in all different places. I have been broadcast, agency, and now producer side, and the job has been completely different in all of those places. I think for us at Banijay, we do a mix of marketing and then the monetization piece, and that can look really different, but actually bringing that into one team is super helpful, seeing that life cycle through. But obviously for all of us in the different organizations, I think you have different rights and different, positions. So I think the job is completely, I feel like all of our jobs are entirely different.
Alex, how do you define it?
Yeah, well, look, I would agree that it isn't one single thing, right? And there are different operating models, and it's a relatively newish space in the wider media sphere. But for me, a digital studio is quite a holistic business, as Liv touched on. And I think of it in three main kind of circles of a Venn diagram. One is kind of creating content, and that could be in all the different ways, whether it's making a 15-second clip of a TV show or making an original half hour. It's amplifying content, so that's the distribution piece, taking content into digital platforms where audiences natively spend their time, and that will be partly to create communities directly, but also to kind of drive awareness and the kind of marketing and amplification piece. And thirdly, commercializing, so making money in the digital space, whether that's with brand partners or through advertising. So I think for me, it's the interplay of those three things that define the studio.
Jasmine, what about BBC Studios?
I wouldn't disagree with anything Liv and Alex has said, but what I would say is the digital studio normally is the closest to the audience, because in terms of you need to meet audiences where they are, and that's what the digital studio is doing. They're converging in places like YouTube and TikTok and making sure that whether you're an agency, whether you're a broadcaster, a media publisher, you are making sure that you're translating that content narrative for your audiences. So you have to understand them, you have to be able to adapt and create for them, and that means listening to what they want. So it's not just about what the business wants and the mandate that you get from that business, it's about what the audience wants. And if you put your audience at the heart of everything you do, then the digital studio is actually going to be far more successful.
But it's interesting, James, in the three answers we've heard here, some people going back a few years might have thought of digital studios primarily being about marketing, about raising the profile of content that you're placing elsewhere. But it's clearly a more multifaceted thing now.
Yeah, I think kind of to build on the point that Liv made, it's the fact that it can be for marketing, but also there's huge monetization opportunities there, both on YouTube and on Facebook, through the kind of AdSense and ad revenue that you can generate there, but also through brand partnerships on Instagram and TikTok. It's not just a single kind of marketing initiative. I'd say a lot of the partners I work with, 80% of them, their focus is on monetization. How can we realize the potential in our archive and generate revenue through social? And the other 20% is about building fandoms and brand affinity. But the two strategies aren't poles apart. You still need to understand how audiences and algorithms and platforms behave, and then build your strategy around that to service what the KPI is.
And Martin, archive's right at the centre of what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the funny thing about that is everyone's described what a digital studio is. I think it's quite interesting to say what it's not, because for most of this audience, I think it's coming from a period of time when digital meant not analog, when the broadcast media was making a television program and then sticking it out in a broadcast over terrestrial. Digital now means not that. So I think we all work for digital studios. We're all making digital content. It's distributed over IP. And all of the great shows that everyone are making is part of our distribution strategy. And that archive, those brilliant stories that are told are all part of what we're doing. And they market themselves, they monetize themselves, and they reach audiences wherever they are.
Okay, so we've got 5 different versions there of what digital studios might be, all overlapping, of course, and all working for the respective businesses our panelists are working for. Let's get into why people in the audience here or people watching on the stream should focus on this now. James, is there a particular reason why digital studios can be helpful in the current moment the television industry is in?
I think the fact that the industry is a bit in flux with the kind of deterioration of linear ad spend and the movement of audience behaviours, kind of younger audiences aren't necessarily gravitating towards linear in the way that their kind of predecessors did. There's definitely a need to kind of pivot and understand that you need to the point that Martin said, be where the audience is and kind of, fish where the fish are, so to speak. So I think that there's definitely a laser focus on that need to kind of pivot, but it's not a new thing. I mean, we've been doing it for well over a decade, and I think that it's something we've been kind of preaching that YouTube and social is an opportunity, and it feels like the industry is slowly moving to where kind of we are in that space rather than it being a kind of reactionary thing to what's going on in the wider industry.
Liv, in Banijay, do you have to make the case for what you're doing, or is that an argument that's largely settled?
Yes and no. So Banijay Rights, the distribution arm of the business, have been doing this for a decade. But with our team, we work within the UK, so we work really closely with the labels, and that can be a tricky conversation sometimes because obviously these people have put their heart and soul into these IPs and they want to protect that. And there is a certain level of fear that comes alongside that. So there's a lot of test and learn, and we have different strategies with different stakeholders. Some people want more kind of input and some have less.
Let's get into that because that's going to be hugely relevant to lots of people watching. Alex, talk to us about the conversations you would have with people who are concerned about what you're suggesting, who maybe, to Liv's point, want to hold their content tight.
Yeah, we tend not to have that as such an issue with producers that we work with. So at Force Studio, we have a kind of verticalized distribution network across social and different genres. We also have the Channel 4 master brand in social and on digital where we can really lean into our voice. And I think a lot of producers see the value of that kind of wider amplification piece. So for us, a show like, for example, Virgin Island, when the first series of that launched, it was really TikTok that really helped propel the kind of talkability around that. So we see lots of great collaboration in that space.
Just to unpack that, and I interviewed one of the producers behind Virgin Island, I think last week on the media show. That wasn't an instant hit on linear, and actually the success of that program came in part because of its slow burn impact on online.
Absolutely, and that kind of the sort of TikTok format, the ability to kind of create real short form content around those kind of key moments really amplified that show, created that talkability, got people to relate to it, but they kind of knew there was more to unpack, and that kind of led to that streaming success.
To that point then, Jasmine, at BBC Studios, do you try and make sure the digital dimension of this is in the discussion early on in the production of BBC content?
Yeah, and I think that's changed quite a lot over the last 8 years. And I think sort of going back to what others have said, it obviously is a tension point. I think as consumption has changed, there has been a fear to change with it from some. I think for us, we have worked incredibly hard to make sure we do get upstream. And we work very closely with a global content studio to make sure that sort of the ideas and the IP is shaped by what we're doing on digital and what we're hearing from audiences. And actually that makes the idea better, because to the point of something is going to work if there is a consumption across all platforms that is going to engage with it. So yes, it's upstream. Is it always going to work? No, but I think where we've seen it work best is where we're having the discussion about how is the audience going to engage with this on every single platform. It's going to have to adapt for those platforms, and getting a creative right means understanding that that brand and that IP is going to have to be played with. It can't just carry in the same format.
Interesting. Now, Martin, let's talk with you about making the case. I suspect with the success of Studio 55, you've kind of made the case, but in the early days of the work that you're doing, was it difficult to say, look, we should be spending time on this, we should be spending resources on this?
I mean, I think a lot of the shows that come out at ITV Studios have a great track record in doing that. The team from Lifted are here who made Love Island. And one of the reasons that show is such a massive success is because they've embraced digital from the very off. So sitting at the heart of ITV Studios is a company that knows that this is how it works. So you just literally have to go, no, look at them, they're doing it really well. And then in the States, they did exactly the same things. You're all of the major networks there are going, we need big hit shows. Everything's, in a state of flux. So they take the formats which have a conversation going on with a fan, to Jasmine's point, that can change the narrative depending on what people are talking about, and then turn it back on itself. So people are listening to that, they're seeing themselves reflected back in the shows. So I think it's starting to do the work for itself. But also, it's not every show. Some shows are not inherently born digitally equal. So you other ones you go, no, that's great. Let's just leave that as it is and let it do its job where it is.
Alex, I can see you nodding as that point's being made. Is it right that each piece of content, each program, each brand is assessed on its own merits rather than having a kind of one-size-fits-all strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And also on the merits of each platform, right? Because the nuances of the platforms are quite different, and something that might work really well on YouTube might not work so well on TikTok and vice versa. So I think it's about interrogating all of those nuances and taking a real kind of test, learn, iterate approach, which I think is, really at the heart of a lot of kind of digital content output.
Can I just drill into the Love Island example a little more, because undoubtedly it's been huge on digital, but is that of value to its producers and its commissioners because it encourages people to watch the full program, which in turn has value, or is that digital success in and of itself generating significant revenue?
The latter. So I'm going to say flywheel first. And somebody else can say authentic and ecosystem later. Yeah. So the one, if people are watching the show, it gets recommissioned. Yeah, that's great. 2, all of the brands that can get involved and sponsor it, that can generate revenue, both on air, in product placement, but outside of that. Years ago, water bottles, they're still doing great business. But also, let's take there was in the States there was one of the cast was called Amaya and got the nickname Amaya Papaya. There was a drinks brand called Poppy that created the Amaya Papaya flavor. Could have gone after them for a brand impeachment, infringement. Sorry, I got the fruit thing going on, and but actually that turned into a licensing deal, and now they're coming back bigger than ever. So the show itself has spawned this whole sort of opportunity, watch parties, a whole load of opportunities, because the IP is sitting at the heart of what we're doing here. It's not just a TV show. That's just part of this whole kind of flywheel.
Do you mind if I jump in? Would you say it's the IP or would you say it's the fandom? Because I think ultimately where you say flywheel, I would say that fandom is driving the next steps. If you're building a fandom around an IP, actually it becomes bigger than the IP. It becomes a universe that then you get consumer products and everything else.
If we're taking the flywheel, let's really stretch this metaphor to breaking point.
Yeah.
Right, let's stick it on a stick and call it a windmill. Right, the fandom is the wind. One doesn't work without the other. You need to set up the infrastructure and all the opportunities, but you need people to be absolutely blowing at it. Okay, it's a collapse, but you get my point.
We've taken it as far as
it's gone.
We took it to breaking point. Yes. So the Love Island example is a really interesting one, but let's get each of you to take us through one example of work you're doing, why you think it's working, and crucially help us understand where the value comes from the success that you've seen. So Liv at Banijay, what example could you give us?
So a lot of the stuff that our team work with, because we're the producer, is older content in the longer form space. So it's things like 8 out of 10 cats. We run that YouTube channel, not Countdown, 8 out of 10 cats plain. And that hasn't been on air for 10 years, and that's a topical panel show. So when you look at that, you're like, well, how is this relevant now? But actually, if you look from an editorial standpoint, a lot of that content is cyclical. So the World Cup is coming, the Eurovision, even politics, that sort of thing. So it's all about looking at how you can resurface that content and give it a new life. And, we have full rights to all of that content. It's not under secondary sale anywhere. And so that's something that otherwise would just kind of be sat on the shelf.
And just to go in further, the success of that would come from pre-roll advertising on YouTube, or from sponsorship, or from subscriptions to your channel, or tell us where the money's coming from.
So the traditional YouTube model says ad sales and direct sales. And it's just, we have like a short strategy that brings people into the longer form content. So it's all about hitting, like the guys have mentioned, like hitting people at different touch points and kind of funneling them through to the place where you can make the most
And
money.
just one more question on this. Is this full episodes, or you've got a team going through clipping moments as well?
It's a mix. So full episodes, but also there's lots of compilations and like longer form content if we can get to, you know, more longer content, more ads. So there is a team that are like very editorially in it, and we have kind of all of these matrices so people know when Alan Carr won The Traitors, for example, where has Alan Carr been in any of our catalogue? Fucking get it out. Like that is the sort of thing that they're just constantly doing day in, day out.
What an interesting example. Alex?
So yeah, I mentioned we have a kind of genre-led distribution sort of strategy at 4 Studio, and one of the genres that's really performing really well for us is docs, and Channel 4's got a kind of great heritage in kind of, you know, like really informative, kind of attention-grabbing documentaries, and it allows us to kind of extend that kind of influence that we have and build brands in that space. So on YouTube, that's actually our most viewed genre, and it drives our most watch time, which is the kind of key metric that we look at. So last year it had, I think it was 2.6 billion minutes viewed on YouTube of our documentary strand. So that for us is really important, and I think communities are really coalescing around content that they love, genres that they love, and we've then extended that, to your point, kind of those are full episodes on YouTube, but we've extended that out into social and building that community, that kind of fandom that we talk about a lot. But that's grown really rapidly as well. So, you know, we launched a Facebook page. In the first month, it had 69 million views and 144,000 followers. So there's a real demand for that kind of factual storytelling, that kind of audiences kind of coming together around those sort of areas.
And you can probably guess what I'm going to ask now, which is, okay, and how do you translate that into income? Where is the biggest source of income when you have that kind of success?
So for that particular genre, obviously it's doing two jobs. It's kind of, as we've touched on, it's that kind of wider amplification piece, the Channel 4 brand, the Channel 4 voice, but also generating revenue. The main revenue space for that would be YouTube.
Okay. James?
Quite a lot of the examples I'd love to talk through we can't go into because we're white label in a lot of the instances, and we work, we can't talk about the people we work with, but there are instances where there are shows that there's a kids show that we were working multi-language, and we actually noticed that there was a huge viewing demographic in South Korea, and we took that information to our partner, and they could then renegotiate their broadcast deal in South Korea and greatly increase the value of that one. Also a similar one with a Italian language dub of a 90s sitcom that we were working on, that again
This is a niche product.
No, to be honest, it was the interesting thing about like that is people would say 90s sitcom, the audience is this demographic, but actually the character focused heavily on fashion, very popular within Gen Z. We could completely reposition the packaging and optimization to focus on the fashion, and all of a sudden you've got a much younger audience. And also they had dubs, so we could put it out there, and in the Italian broadcasters saw how popular it was and then relicensed it out in Italy. It hadn't been licensed there for 20 or so years. So like that's the value we can bring there. But in terms of like one that I can openly talk about, like Kitchen Nightmares is a really fun example. We ran the clips channel like we would any other clips channels. Here's moments, in, out, a few compilations. But the way in which the fans are engaging with it was crazy. There's a very, very meme-heavy culture around Gordon Ramsay online and on Reddit, on Twitter, all those types of things. So we completely lent in and started leaning into kind of side characters. And there's an episode about a microwave called Chef Mike, and Chef Mike featured in everything. And they're like, look out for the cameo and Chef Mike every time there was a microwave in the background. And the channel more and more morphed into this kind of crazy in-joke. And the audience loved it and they engaged with it. And a lot of it is it's just moments from the TV show. We're not really augmenting it or changing anything about that. But the tone of voice in which we optimize it is very, very focused on the younger audience. However, we have a separate long form episode channel, which is very much aligned with the tone of voice that it was broadcast at linear. So it's season 1, episode 1, title of the show. The audience views on that is a completely different demographic to the audience viewing the clips channel, and it's the same content.
And just to go into that one, sorry, go on, Liv.
I was just going to ask a question on that, because you should all look at that page. It's mental. But like, how do you get that signed off? Because when you look at those thumbnails and that copy, I'm just like, I could never.
For forgiveness.
Okay.
So no, it was through the success. it was one of those that we had kind of free reign. And again, the latest series of Kitchen Nightmares is now on, but for 10 years it wasn't. So there wasn't as much kind of marketing oversight or control. And it was like, okay, if it's making money, go for it. And actually, the success spoke for itself. The viewing went through the roof, the revenue went through the roof. And actually, we can position the long form in a very traditional linear sense, but the clips and compilations one is bonkers, and that's what the fans want. They're like, I funnily enough, last night it was top post on Funny on Reddit. Who the fuck is running this page?
Give the game
and I shared it with the team, and I was like, it's us.
Okay, so let me ask you about the team, because as I'm listening to you spotting that opportunity, I'm thinking, is this just because one of you noticed how people were responding and thought, let's do it? Or do you use software or AI to monitor conversations, digital conversations on social media, in the comments around your content to generate ideas?
Much like the cliche of flywheel and authentic, data-led strategy is absolutely key.
There you go.
But it's a combination of both. It's art and science. I would say that we've built a lot of data infrastructure to understand audience preferences, like genre, performance, demographics, video length types, all those types of things, when people are dropping off, why they dropped off, to kind of inform the strategy around it. But also having human channel managers and strategists and content strategists oversee it and understand this is a trend that's happening. How can we react? Much to the point of like Alan Cole on Traitors, did the same thing with chat shows. Okay, what films are coming out? You know, how can we build compilations about previous guests that are aligned with latest releases? So you have to have kind of a bit of a strategic overview and understand that culture, and have people that are chronically online and live and breathe the culture, but also having a vast amount of data. We've got 11.2 billion organic views going through our systems every month. It just gives us a macro understanding of what is happening, so we can pivot. So you're not only talking the language of the audience, but you're talking the language of the algorithm, and those two married makes for a happy marriage. What am I saying?
Well, you're saying lots of things that are very interesting. 4 brilliant examples. Jasmine, a fifth.
Can I just build on what James is saying just for a second? Because I think a data-led strategy, absolutely. But the most underutilized tool that you have is Content ID in YouTube. If you're not using Content ID, you absolutely have to. That is where all of the UGC, so where your fans are playing with your content, lives, and it's catalogued. And you can not only use it to monetize it, but you can also use it to drive insight. And getting an understanding as to how your brand is being played with by your audience is really under-leveraged. So please go and check that out. I will now answer your question.
Thanks. Well, I mean, I'm glad you gave us that advice.
So BBC Studios is organised and structured from a team perspective around fandoms. We talk a lot about fandoms, but we really have gone that one step further. We've got a head of fandom, and we organise around the fans that we have.
Someone's job title is head of fandom.
Someone's job title is head of fandom. He's excellent.
I'm sure he is.
And he used to be a creator, which I think tells you a lot about fandom, and it tells you a lot about how we work. So every fandom is different, from a Doctor Who to a Bluey to a Top Gear. But Bluey is the best example for us, because Bluey, if you've got young kids, hopefully you're one of those fans. It is an incredible show, but we have built it as a fandom, so it's something so much more. And in terms of why we do that, if we feel like we are catering to the fandom, we are building that fandom and giving them what we want, that not only works for them, and we're thinking about how we can market everything we're doing, but it's also, if we focus on that as our number one KPI, it impacts our revenue. Because not only are we making money through YouTube, which we do and we do very well, but we're also diversifying our revenue. We're thinking about how we make money on TikTok. Bluey was the number one preschool brand for a long time, and the fastest growing, and still is the fastest growing. But we're also thinking about how can we diversify even further. You shouldn't rely just on YouTube, obviously a big revenue driver, but thinking about how can you engage with the fandom and know what they want. We got inundated around Bluey, around we want fandom merch. Bluey has a huge consumer products line across the US, LATAM, UK, everywhere. However, they wanted more. So we decided that we were going to do digital e-commerce. We now have incredible lines that are really rooted in fandom. It is if you know, you know. So featuring characters that aren't often utilized in mass lines. If you're a fan of Bluey, we focus on Coco, Rusty, Muffin. They aren't really utilized very much, but it's really digging into that fandom, what they want. And our number one thing is, if you're following that fandom, if you're listening to that fandom, you will make more money.
So in some ways, these products, and it sounds like you did this in a different way, you're signaling to the fans, we get it. we're listening to you. So by running a piece of merchandising that signals a fringe character, it's not just about selling that product. It's also about sending a message.
Yeah. And they buy into that world. Like, we've got an incredible partner in the ABC in Australia, obviously CBeebies and iPlayer in the UK, and Disney around the world. They see that what we're doing, we put full episodes out, we have different merch, impacts them too. Bluey is still the #1 preschool show on Disney. So for us, all ships rise.
And I think to that point, like, YouTube has moved away from describing itself as a social platform to a streamer, and it wants to compete in that space, understandably. But it still is a social platform with social elements, and it allows you to be much more agile. We integrate fan kind of engagement into the content we create. You know, we can put like top 10 comments and make compilations based off of the engagement we're having, or we even put out a poll and say, which of these moments would you love to see? We've already made the videos, so whatever they pick, we've just got to pop it up. But it gives them a sense of ownership and integration into the thing. So it's not just one-way traffic. It's not like it feels like a dialogue, and that leads to far richer engagement, longer watch times, and ultimately more revenue.
It's also a great signal to advertisers. So obviously BBC Studios and our digital studio is funded by brands and advertisers who want to spend with us, and therefore being able to show that our fans are engaged and they want everything that we do gives us the really clear signal that we can invest more in original content and go and sell sponsorships, 100% share of voice, all different things, rather than just relying on the YouTube ad sales team.
Okay, so we've heard 5 brilliant examples there. We've explored the definition of digital studios, and we've explored why this matters more than ever right now. Let's now talk about where you're putting a lot of your work, the platforms, what kind of relationship you have with them, and also whether you feel you're getting a reasonable return on the successes that you're having. Alex, let's talk about you first.
So we work with platforms in different ways, and we use them for slightly different things. So YouTube for us is all about long form episodes. It's all about watch time. It's all about opening up that kind of ad inventory. We have a partner sales agreement with YouTube, so we sell against that ad inventory. So it's very much a partnership. That's how we approach that. With the other platforms and social platforms, it is much more about driving that amplification, building communities. We know we're not going to earn money directly from those platforms. Instagram aren't going to pay us a revenue share, but we can build really engaged communities that we can sell against. So we work with media agencies, media buyers, brands who want to have access to our Channel 4 voice, our Channel editorial, our kind of Channel 4 editorial leaning, but they also want to access those communities. So we kind of go into it with our eyes open, knowing that we're going to work with those platforms in very different ways. It's that kind of, James touched on it, that kind of art and science. You have to really bring that to bear with those kinds of strategies, and that kind of creative mixed with the data, mixed with the insight, which will lead to those kind of different monetization products and different ways of selling against what you do.
So you've talked about advertising being sold against what you do. Martin, let's bring you in. I was interviewing a few weeks back a very successful YouTuber who was saying the bulk of his income came from in-video reads. He was making much more money off that, where there was sponsorship involved rather than the pre-roll adverts.
The authenticity.
I'm not going to say that.
Come on, I've set you up.
Okay, no. Actually, I think for us, we make a lot of our revenue on Google ad sales, but because of the ITV sales house that have been selling ads to brands and have amazing track record in doing that for years, the fact that we have a partner sales agreement means that within the UK we can make a multiple on the sort of money you can make on YouTube alone. So that's absolutely the best way, and it's at scale. I mean, when you've got the World Cup coming up, you've got content around that, the opportunity for there is brilliant.
Let me just unpack that, though. So that's great for you that you've got access to that, but there'll be people here thinking, okay, well, what lesson can I take that applies to my business? So
you could say, well, why not partner up with somebody who's got a fantastic ad sales house? If you want your YouTube channel to monetize better, there's a few examples of people on this panel who could potentially help you out with that. So there is a way to be able to get in that, because if you can have, not everybody has access to do that, but you can partner with ITV Studios is one, but there are others are available. To quote, I've worked at the BBC for a while, so that is an absolute opportunity. But going back to the in-read content, I mean that comes from podcasting, I guess. Where I certainly know on the podcasts I read, the dynamic ad insertion makes you almost no money, and all of the money in podcasts comes from post reads or content reads. So that's great. And if you've got the opportunity to do that, but then you also need to know, okay, so how am I going to get to that brand? Who's going to do that sales for me? It's possible, but you need to build yourself a network of people who've got relationships with brands, with ad sales. So whether that's a platform on podcasts like, Acast or Audio Boom, or for us, we work very closely with Spotify, and especially since they come into the video sense, the kind of the merging of television and podcasting and YouTube is happening at a rate.
Coming together.
Yeah, it's all coming together, and you can use all of the different monetization models to make it work. And it depends on the content. And as Alex said, it's about using the right platform in the right way and maximizing your revenue in the best way possible.
Liv, what about Banijay? How do you interact with the platforms? What's your relationship with them? What do you ask for from them?
I think we have really good relationships with the platforms. I think the thing that we have is high quality content. Like, obviously these platforms are absolutely got on tap UGC and the lower fi content, but we've got content that costs a lot to make and they're getting it for free essentially. So I think there's a good value exchange there.
Yes.
And in terms of servicing that archive as well, we can use all of these platforms that didn't exist when these shows were first out to find those new niche audiences.
Are they equally easy to sit down with and have a conversation with?
If anyone has a meta contact, send. No, they're not.
Go on then, let's have a ranking.
Well, I would say YouTube.
They're the easiest to interact with.
Yeah, and also in terms of tools
Everyone
available.
nodding? I think everyone's nodding there, or Alex is thinking about nodding.
Yeah, probably YouTube.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
What about Insta?
then
TikTok?
well, that's Meta. So then it would have to be TikTok, and then Meta.
Meta's not easy to deal with.
Look, it's being recorded, isn't it?
Sorry, no one's listening. It's fine. You can tell us.
Dan Biddle might be listening.
I know.
There's a guy called Dan.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan, if you're watching.
Yeah, we love you.
We
Dan's my
love you.
contact.
Yeah.
Every
Come
form I
back.
put in, I'm like, it's Dan Biddle. Dan Biddle will help us.
Tell us more about the mysterious Dan Biddle. Jasmine, you sound like you know Dan as well.
Dan,
Poor old Dan.
he's really handsome.
I feel like we're going into
Hi,
interesting
Dan.
territory here.
An incredible man that has obviously got a lot of people chasing him.
A busy diary.
A busy diary, and probably underground at this point. But I think has got a difficult job. Do you know?
But I think the meta platforms, in a way, there's only so much that they can give you, right? And I think it's about kind of, we talked about the kind of art and science, the data piece. You do get a lot from that, right? And one thing I would say about meta platforms, you get a lot of information from the platform. You get a lot of data that can really help you decide how you're going to interact with it.
Okay. Well, Dan, if you are watching, I'm sure you'd be very welcome at future RTS
I think
events.
the partnership managers at all of these platforms have really difficult jobs because the same person who's doing the panel is also helping you get your account verified or getting you back in if you lock. Like they're not resourced well enough, and it's absolutely not the fault of the partnership managers. Like, they do 10 jobs in one, and I think it's the boom and bust of this thing came out of nowhere. All of a sudden we're all doing it, and they haven't scaled up their teams accordingly.
Completely. And the biggest issue we have is the algorithm.
Yeah.
And that's not something that Dan can help us with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love you, Dan.
What can Dan?
Because he's here right now.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Because also, I think one of the kind of core things to your point, partnerships, resourcing, like ultimately, the platforms have greater goals than servicing one market, one industry, one territory. They are operating at levels that just no one partnership manager can control. And ultimately, if Facebook needs to change their demographics and try and get younger people on board, then publishers aren't their focus, then fine. It's not going to be their kind of core focus. They might then reverse that decision like they did on the 1st of April this year and try and focus back on video again.
Yeah.
And you just have to roll with it. I think it's that adaptability aspect.
It's one of the challenges that we all have, that everybody has, is that when you don't own your own platform, if you don't own iPlayer, ITVX, or whatever it is, that you are reliant on the platforms themselves and where they're going, and it's a global play, not just a UK focused thing. So you just got to be cognizant of that and go in with your eyes open and be flexible and nimble and be willing to change, because the influence that any one person has is going to be relatively small.
I think going back to the beginning about what is a digital studio and that sort of stuff, I think agility is absolutely key. Like it's really fundamental. Digital video monetization and digital video as a kind of economy is pretty young still. It's probably only about 15 years old. So it's constantly evolving, constantly operating in different ways. And I think that kind of agility and flexibility is absolutely the heart.
What's working today may not be the thing that works tomorrow. I should just mention, by the way, that at 1:15, I'm going to turn it over to you for 15 minutes. So if you've got questions you'd like to ask our guests, start thinking about that now. But we've got 10 minutes or so before then. I'd like to talk about some of the practicalities within your businesses for making sure you have the relevant people and skills to do all the things that you're describing very well. Have you had to change, Jasmine, who's working within your teams? You said the head of fandom has come from a creator background, so it looks like you're hiring quite different people to BBC Studios might have been hiring 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at BBC Studios for 8 years. When I joined, it was a digital marketing team. And there is definitely capabilities that are the same. And a lot of people that were there when I joined are still there now and have moved up the ranks or in leadership positions. But ultimately, I think today you are looking for someone that understands the art and science that everyone has talked about, understands that you have to go hunting for that insight. You can't go and ask someone else. You have to be paying attention. The capabilities of a creator versus someone that's sort of working at one of our organizations are similar but very different. Creators are 24/7. They're constantly obsessing about their thumbnail, A/B testing, what they're going to post the next hour, and also where they're going in the next year. That's the kind of sort of hunger and planning and sort of ethos that we are breeding.
Okay. Liv, what about you?
I think to your point about the creators like living and breathing in the content and A/B testing, we really look for people like that in the team as well, who have the kind of editorial head on them, but also live in the comments. When we were talking earlier about like responding to the comments and doing the polls and that sort of thing, like sometimes we will literally make content to order. If we're on like Would I Lie to You and someone's like, I want a compilation of David's best bits from this series or whatever, we will literally make that video for them because people don't owe you their time. And the audience
Will
is
you
the
tell
currency.
that particular person in the comments, I've made this video for you? Would you even feature the comment in a video?
Sometimes, but what I would say is that you want to be listening and have that kind of two-way relationship, but you don't want it to be so strong that someone then feels like they can, you know, you made this for me and you left this bit out and blah, 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 blah. Like there's a balance.
Right,
like
okay.
the YouTube comments are the best and the worst place.
But what about you, James? Who are the kind of people you're hiring to do what you're doing well?
So I would say you still want what you'd want in any kind of area in business. You want people tenacious, curious, ambitious. You know, we want that kind of drive within them. I think that people have now an inherent understanding of platforms. They've grown up with it. The kind of younger kind of generations going through completely understand the language of how audiences and algorithms and platforms engage with each other. I think to the point, you just want people that are really curious and want to experiment and iterate, because the agility point, the fact that things are constantly changing, that you're like, right, God, carousels are up, right, we're just making carousels now, everyone clear everything, we're just doing this. Yeah, you want people to be proactive and happy.
But are there particular technical skills? Because I guess there might be people here thinking, well, we've always needed curious people. We've always needed tenacious people. We've always needed people paying attention to our audience. What's so different?
Well, I think so kind of the skills change. Like I had started as an editor and like most of the people we hired were editors and stuff like that. But actually now it's, you know, you want strategists, people that can read data. You want people that can understand kind of fandom, stuff like that. So there are skill sets. We have editors, we have channel managers, we have partnerships, we have production, we have strategy, new business. All of those, they're slightly different skill sets, but people have to adapt and change. Like when I joined, there was 3 of us. There's now 500 globally, and it's everyone's role evolves and changes. You just want people that can adapt and aren't scared of change and aren't scared of the fact that, okay, what you know is true now is not going to be true tomorrow, and you just need to be able to move quickly with it.
I think one thing is that a lot of people who work in kind of digital studio businesses or digital first businesses are much more multifaceted. Yeah. The skill sets are really intertwined. And I've been running digital studio business for the last 15 years. And 15 years ago, it was really hard to recruit in that space because, you know, often in TV, I always find it hard. Like a development producer just worked on the development. That's it. They didn't do anything else. I'm not saying that's an easy job, but that they kind of handed it over to someone else. And an edit producer would be in the edit, and they'd only come in for that period of time. Whereas creative producers in digital might develop ideas, produce, edit, shoot, post-produce. They will have platform understanding. They might even have been a channel manager, and they know how their way around the back end of Meta Business Suite or YouTube Studio. And I'm not saying every person does every role. We still, in Force Studio, we have kind of divisions and departments that are quite clear, but a lot of the skill sets are really multifaceted, and I think it just has grown up in that kind of way where the link between the content you're making and the viewer is much, much closer, so that you end up kind of having much more experience across different parts of that process.
So yeah, it's good just to crystallise that. Enthusiastic nerds.
All right.
Just for people that are obsessed
So I'm just going to put what Liv said and what you said. So enthusiastic nerds who live in the comments. Is that right? Okay, so we've got that sorted. Is that who you're looking for, Martin?
Yeah, absolutely. But also, I think if you're running a TV company at the moment, you might go, well, we make video, we put stuff up, but there's also a looking at it from a cost perspective. So it's like, I need to edit this piece of video I've shot, which could have been shot on a Red, or it could have been shot on an iPhone. There's a cost difference. It could be edited in an Avid suite, or it could be done on your laptop in Premiere. Because of the business model, this is all sounding great, but the margins on this are far, far smaller. We're talking pennies, not pounds. So there's also a kind of like, you have to look at what tech it is. So those nerds and stuff are doing it on prosumer kit. The stuff they're in the office is probably the same stuff they've got at home. So you can move between the two, and they might edit something at work and then go back and shoot their own stuff and upload it to their own channels when they get back home.
Does that lead to tension, though, in Banijay, for example, if you've got one department who's doing, as Martin describes, using technology largely available to all of us, very fine margins, but within the same business, you've got people who are operating on completely different technology, which is much more expensive in a business which has bigger margins?
Yeah, I think there's obviously like the way TV is made is very different. Like, I have always been digital in TV. I never had a traditional TV background, so I don't know what an offline editor is. But there's the thing with digital, especially in Banijay, is that we work with and for the producers. So we're there as a resource, and it shouldn't be an us versus them. But like Martin said, it's all about the overhead costs. And if the best practice is to do it in the cheaper way that's more agile, where people can work on it from different locations and things like that, I don't think that people should be afraid of, just because we're not using an Avid suite anymore, it doesn't mean TV is dead. It's being agile and moving into different ways of doing things.
Okay, we've got a couple of minutes before I bring all of you in with questions. I'm going to ask you all to get your crystal ball out here slightly, because this is, to put it mildly, a fluid moment for the TV industry and for media more broadly. What one big shift or trend can you see coming that's relevant to digital studios that you are aware is there, and maybe are thinking we're going to need to respond to this sooner rather than later? Anyone want to go first? Or I'll just pick someone. All right, James.
I forgot what I wrote for this question.
So micro dramas.
Yeah,
No. I think it's just going to be a continued evolution of the business model. To Martin's point about pennies, not pounds. But I think the integration of brands as part of the entertainment. People are like, younger audience, Gen Alpha, are happy to buy through their entertainment. Like the kind of purchase aspect of TikTok Shop and stuff like that is completely ingrained in how they engage with the platform. It's not seen as jarring in any sense. So I think to kind of help subsidize some of the kind of reduction in revenue you might see through digital kind of activity compared to linear, I think that integration of brand is going to be absolutely key, and we'll see those business models evolve and become more kind of just more robust.
Well, considering you'd forgotten what you'd written down, that was a very interesting answer. Jasmine?
I think that there will be a new platform. You can't go all in on anything. You have to be diversified, because there will be a new platform. TikTok came out of nowhere. And, the fact that sort of Liv is saying that, I'm saying Liv was saying and not anybody else, that TikTok is number 2 in terms of how we rank. That says something. So there will be a new platform. So you should diversify, and you should make sure that your teams are looking for the next thing.
Liv?
I think it's all about thinking about IP expansion, but not necessarily, what is the digital version of this show exactly how it is, and being a bit more fluid with opening that IP up to what it could be for a digital audience, not necessarily trying to retrofit a TV IP to a digital audience.
Martin?
I think for traditional media, we'll see them embracing this more. So I think that it'll be less and less easy for traditional producers to sort of go, I'm just working with these guys, because I think the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, everybody is going to merge, consolidate, and they're going to want to get reach wherever they can. So I think there's going to be some major changes in the way our public service and commercial broadcasters interact with the US and potentially Asian and markets, and we're going to see a completely new media landscape.
Last but not least,
I always find these future predictions very difficult because
predicting
it's very
the future is
quickly.
difficult.
It's very difficult. But what I would say is we're kind of in an interesting period of the last kind of couple of years. There's been a real explosion of content as the kind of really key communication tool, and we're seeing that now. You know, every football club is now a media owner that's kind of building content arms. You know, we're seeing it from brands. So I think the competition is probably more intense than it's ever been, and I think that will continue. So I think it's more important than ever to really diversify the ways that you distribute content and the ways that you make money from content.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking all 5 of our panelists. Well, I'm not close to running out of questions, but I'm aware I've had 45 minutes all to myself. So let's go to the back, and we're going to get a microphone to those of you putting up your hands. If you could say who you are and then a to the point question, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Teresa Potocka from Sense of Future Pictures. Thank you very much. Can we talk about AI, please? Because I haven't heard this mentioned in the future gazing part, and I've just been to Cannes at the World AI Film Festival, and AI is at the core of the conversation. Even Sky was present there. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And even this morning on Radio 4, in the embedding AI in new skills, that was the conversation.
Okay, well, let's get into the right now. Who's using AI and how in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we use AI a lot in an operational sense. Our ability to kind of transcribe and kind of process large data files, being able to kind of collate that, make it available for our kind of human touch kind of creative elements of it. So not on the generative AI, but much more on the operational overview. And it's an incredible operational tool. It is condensed down things that took days to minutes, you know, weeks to days. So it's a phenomenal tool if you're used correctly, but we use it to support human-led creativity as opposed to being replacing and making kind of AI generated videos. I think that and it's an interesting conversation because we even within our business we've got people that are like, I don't feel comfortable, I don't want to work with AI, but I feel like you're fighting the tide often. You know, there are ways to vastly improve the efficiency of your business through it, but I think that there's still an aversion to kind of AI generated creative, and you know that I think we're a bit way off from kind of people accepting it in the same way they would human creative.
I think
sorry, let's go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that I was thinking about this recently. I think we need to talk about AI a little bit differently, because I think when we talk about AI in this industry, we're often thinking about generative AI, which is only really one AI tool. And actually, there are just so many AI tools which are kind of practical, administrative. And I think pretty soon we'll be using a lot of them in the way that we use email or a web browser. And then we probably need to find new language around AI and not talk about AI holistically, but sort of break it down into the different elements, because I think generative AI causes a lot of fear and is one part of it, but I think there's a lot more to it than that.
I hate to agree with men, but exactly that. Operationally for us, like, it saves so much time, and we're at the point where we're working off on Would I Lie to You? The truths and lies are written in an Excel spreadsheet, and the editor's having to go and find those things. And actually, like, these AI systems operationally make such a massive difference.
But two things here can be true. It can be true that AI is helping the practicalities of your businesses, but it is also true, to the person asking the question, that it is going to be heavily involved in the creative processes of some people, not all. How do you feel about that, Jasmine, for the creative dimension of AI?
The creative dimension of AI is something that we approach with caution, but also with curiosity. So I don't think that we should approach it with fear. And I think that there is a real risk if we sort of start to back away from it, that we're avoiding something that could create something amazing. Like, you know, there have been so many different changes across the last sort of couple of decades that have bred fear. So, but we need to lean into it and understand how it's regulated, how that we make sure that we're protecting talent, and protecting not just people in front of the camera, but behind the camera, writers and everything like that. So I think it's cautious curiosity.
Okay. Thanks for the question. I'm aware we could do a whole panel and more on it,
Yes.
but in the spirit of making sure we hear from people, there's a gentleman in the glasses there. Okay.
Hi, I'm John Rood with the U.S. consulting firm Magid. My question's for Roz. On your book, Art of Explanation,
I'm just the moderator here.
were you to do a sequel specific to this topic of digital media and monetization, what would remain true of the treatise of your book? Is it still about
My goodness,
clarity?
you're taking us in a different direction. Well, I think you're quite right to say that I wrote a book about communication before AI was part of our day-to-day lives. And if you were thinking about how to communicate effectively, you would definitely want to include AI in some of the processes that you would use to reach that point. The degree to which you would do that, I'm happy to talk to you about it after the event. But I'm keen to keep this on digital studios. And my book's got lots of interesting things on it, but there's nothing in it about digital studios. Let's have a microphone down the front here, please.
Hi, Pippa Considine. I'm a freelance journalist. I'm really interested in how you divide the money up. So obviously the IP doesn't lie with one person often, and a couple of you at least are representing indies and IP creators. So could you tell me, how do they get the money, and is there enough to go around?
Happy to answer that. Yes. So on our revenue kind of generative deals, a lot of the time it's on a revenue share. So we will have an agreed revenue share with the IP owner. In instances, for instance, like Kitchen Nightmares, there are multiple rights holders within different territories, and we accurately report back the territory revenue that's generated in each location, and that is how it's distributed. Any residual payments to talent or anything like that is handled by the rights holder. We don't get involved in that one. But in terms of revenue, we've paid over $100 million, either dollars or pounds, I know there is a big difference between the two, over the last 3 years to our partners. So it's a substantial amount of money that we have paid to our partners.
And presumably your partners want to know if it's pounds or dollars.
The report was accurate. I am vague.
Martin, how do you approach this?
It can be quite complicated. Again, I could refer to my colleagues at Lifted here about waterfalls and the way that the money, because broadly speaking, you get a load of money in from, well, Google take theirs or wherever, whoever's selling your ad, you get a load of money from your content, and then you have to work out who should get some, and it depends how many stakeholders you've got into it, and it can be incredibly complicated, but it's all about splitting up that equitably, about IP holders, producers, the people who are involved, creators, and then there could be third party people who have some. So I mean, to be honest, it's not my favourite topic.
But you have to nail it down, presumably, before you start posting this stuff online.
Yes, I mean, ideally you do. What was it? You ask forgiveness? 'Cause we make Hell's Kitchen. We run the Hell's Kitchen channel with Gordon, and he's very interested in how it all works. Yeah. I'm not sure he's the most forgiving person necessarily, but it is. Yeah, you do need to know, because the thing is, you can go into this and go, oh, it's fantastic. I've got an incredibly popular show, and then by the end of it, you get to the bottom and go, well, where's mine? Because it's all gone anywhere else. So nailing it down is incredibly important if you want to make a return on the time you're putting in.
Great, thanks for the question. Let's get a microphone here, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, another consultant, Ed Hall from Expert Media Partners. The session was about a digital first world, and we've really been listening to a conversation about a digital second world. And to stick with the painful metaphors, we've been listening to the linear golden goose laying digital eggs, with you guys as the midwives. That's nice. Where in the future do we go if connected television is replacing linear television the moment in 2034? Where is this business going? Because at the moment, everything you're talking about has been driven by large linear audiences and large linear brands. So where is the future? Is this dying?
No. Next question. No. So we work with Dr. Seuss, which obviously is a huge brand, but the way in which they work, the film and TV rights don't sit with the overarching brand, but we wanted to build direct-to-consumer property for them through YouTube. So that was working with them over a 5-year strategy of, okay, how can we position them as a premium brand with kids on YouTube and families? And so the first year was making kind of very low-cost animations based on their books. Second year was actually digital original format that easily could have gone to a linear broadcast. It could have gone to CBeebies or Nickelodeon or wherever you could have been, but it went directly to YouTube. Third year was partnering with creators in the space, so Blippi and people like that. And then fourth year is focusing on international, and I can't remember what the fifth year plan is. We're on year 3. But it's with that, that is digital first. That is actually, rather than using linear footage and repackaging it, it's okay, we're going to go directly where they are and build the brand there. It's a combination of both kind of building content that would resonate organically. There's paid media to amplify, but the reliance on paid media deteriorates year on year because we want to be exactly where they are, connecting with the audience and building a meaningful fandom for them that is directly to consumer.
Alex, I'd like to hear from you on this, and Jasmine.
Well, obviously, we are all TV adjacent, so that's why there's been a lot of talk about the kind of TV element and digital and TV colliding, because that's what this is about. And I think if you had digital businesses that were not, then you have very different types of answers, very different types of approaches in certain ways, because there are plenty of businesses who are making digital original content in social first. At 4 Studio, we do that as well, right? We have Channel 4.0, which is all digital original. It's all made for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. It's kind of creator-led, creator formats. We also have a brand called 4 Served, which is our food channel, which is, again, all made, that channel's actually made in-house. It's all digital original. It's designed for TikTok and Instagram. We have a kind of a roster of creator talent that feature across our shows, and we're building brands there. So we're kind of doing both of those things, but this obviously is a very TV adjacent panel.
Just a quick answer from you, Jasmine, on this.
You're absolutely right to challenge. We've all used examples that are linear first, but I think that gives us the method, and applying that method into finding new IP and building new IP around fandoms is exactly what we're doing.
Okay, let's get a microphone in the centre here, please. Trickey, get a microphone there, and then afterwards we'll go to the end of the row there.
Hi, I'm Holly Cobas. I actually work in the Lives team as senior digital producer at Banijay. I've got a question for Alex and perhaps Jasmine as well. Working on the broadcaster side, what benefit do you see in starting new IP-specific social channels alongside using the broadcaster channels to promote new shows, such as Virgin Island? Obviously, shows that are new, maybe don't have an established audience yet, or potentially aren't being recommissioned in the long term. Is there specific long-term goals in mind with these channels or KPIs, especially if they're not eligible for monetization at that point?
So I love this question. This is one that comes around a lot because it's so hard to answer. Do you go for the main brand channels, or do you create narrower channels aimed at particular products and fans?
I think it depends what genre you're trying to play in. And I think you've got to understand how the audiences are consuming on that platform. We have lots of brand channels that are from linear TV, but we've also got lots of channels that are new IP focused. Just to the comment I made then, we are over half of our commissions are for new IP that aren't related to a linear show. So you can do that if you're thinking about not the end goal being on TV. To use the flywheel sort of comment that was made earlier. If you're thinking about what that ecosystem is going to look like, and yes, you might not be able to monetize immediately, but you're thinking about actually, could this be a newsletter? Could it be e-commerce? Could it be TikTok shop? So yes, we have done it, and we've done it successfully with Funny Parts. We've got some amazing new releases coming up this year. So my answer would be yes.
Quick answer from you guys.
Well, I guess both are true, right? We, depends on the rights position, obviously, of the content, and that's obviously something from a Channel 4 perspective that's important to us, right? And our rights position, but broadly, genre-led can be really effective. We use the Channel 4 master brand to be our real tone of voice, so we could do things like, we spent 24 hours posting in the voice of Donald Trump when during his kind of state visit over here. So we can do that kind of thing and really lean into that. And we also go very heavy down the genre-led, because we know that audiences really coalesce around types of content, not just individual content brands.
Thanks for the question. Final question, brief if you could. Thanks.
Thank you. Nicole Carmen-Davis, Mighty Atom Entertainment. And my question actually follows on from a couple of yours. And James, this is for you. Are you finding now, as technology is changing and other creators, storytellers are looking at YouTube, for example, in the kids space and going, I don't need to raise £6 million for my children's animation show. I can work with new technology, different types of creators and create a show. And are they coming to you and saying, can you help me launch this? Are you seeing it from a much earlier stage?
We're definitely having conversations with people that are contemplating kind of the social strategy earlier on, and from a much more diverse kind of collection of genres. I would say that to kind of Jasmine's point about generative AI and cautious kind of curiosity, creators and individuals and kind of startups, stuff like that, are fully embracing the use of AI as a kind of lowering the barrier to entry. They don't need the kind of huge infrastructure, both from a kind of operational sense, but also from a generative and creative sense. So, I think that there are going to be more people able to kind of create kind of more interesting stuff through that. Whether they want the kind of strategy support or the YouTube support, there is still an element of like they need to get past a certain threshold to monetize. They need to kind of build the audiences to actually return, and no matter what the investment, they need to kind of make something that's engaging with audiences. We're open to conversations like at all levels. What I would say is that that most algorithms are beasts. They need feeding. You need a lot of content. You need to have a robust strategy that's going to last 6, 12, 24 months to kind of make sure that you're building. It's not an overnight success. You might get a video go viral if you're lucky, but even then you need the next video to also do well and the next video to do well and so on and so on. So whilst the barrier to entry is definitely lower because of the kind of technological advances, I would say that the point is still true that you need content that people want to engage with and that you have sufficient amounts of it to build a robust strategy to return the investment.
That is where we're going to have to leave it. I've learned so much in the last hour. Thank you very much to all 5 of our guests. Please join me in saying thank you.